Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Julie, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the September Pipeline SMS Group conference call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. I would now like to turn the call over to Anne-Marie Kaiser. You may begin your conference.
Good morning, everyone out there on the line. Just wanted to introduce the speakers, go over the agenda, and get right into the webinar. So thank you for joining us today, members of the Pipeline SMS Group. It's our first conference call that we're doing of this type. So today you'll hear from Sean Lyon with Marathon Pipeline. He's the Vice President of Operations. Bill Bird with Regulatory Compliance Partners. Tony Cockshut with Enbridge. Myself, Anne-Marie Kaiser with Marathon Petroleum Company. And Dave Merck may also be presenting as well, and he is with API. So as we move forward, we're going to go through API's antitrust guidelines. No discussion or forecasting of prices for goods or services by or received by a company. No sharing or discussing any company's confidential or proprietary information. No discussion of any company-specific purchasing plans, merger divestment plans, production information, inventories, or costs. No sharing or discussion of specific company compliance costs unless publicly available. No agreement or discussion regarding the purchase or sale of goods or services. No discussion on how individual companies intend to respond to potential market or economic scenarios, government actions. Discussion limited to generalities. No disparaging remarks regarding specific vendors, products, or services. And if a discussion presents an antitrust issue, raise your concerns immediately. If the discussion continues, announce that you are leaving the meeting because you have an antitrust concern, and immediately report your concern to API's Office of General Counsel and to your company's own counsel. All right, so the agenda for the webinar today, a lot of you should have received a Word document with this in there, but we're going to go through a greeting and a welcome, a charter and communication plans. We'll give an update on the Pipeline SMS Industry Working Group's effectiveness teams and conformance team updates. We're going to review a 68-question assessment tool and go over briefly some of the discussions we had with INGA or during the INGA's Pipeline Safety Committee meeting, and then have a group discussion. So to hear back from you guys what you want to hear more of and what you'd like to get out of this group. So with that, I will turn it over to Sean Lyon with Marathon Pipeline.
Thanks, Anne-Marie, and good morning, everyone. I want to, as Ann said, I want to welcome everyone to the first SMS group meeting. Let me give you a quick genesis of how this group and really what we're embarking upon to develop this group more. Your company would have signed up to commit to their journey on RP 1173, and there's another level of commitment to be part of what we call the SMS group. Basically, it's a working group that is meant to get operators together to share how they're doing SMS, their successes, their failures, their struggles, what needs, and really help each other along in that journey. And this is the first formal webinar we've had to formalize that group. We have sent out some emails and other things, but so you're at the beginning of this SMS group journey. So our hope is that really we have a high level of engagement. As I was thinking through the purpose of this group, it's really industry-led, but more importantly, it's industry strong. And the more we all engage to help each other, the better our SMS journey will be as an industry. And so I really hope that you put into this, because you're definitely going to get out of it as we talk through this 1 hour today. And then at the end, we'll ask for a little bit of feedback either on the call or afterwards of going forward, what would be helpful to you as for your company as you move forward. The thing I'll also just leave you with too before I turn it back over to Anne-Marie is this is somewhat, probably we're familiar with the term of community practice. So this is a community practice group that we can help each other. And I hope that you'll not only be engaged, but you're going to ask tough questions. I hope you share your successes, some of your wins that you've had, but probably more importantly, what are some of your failures? And I think one of the things of our journey on SMS is that it's easy to talk about the wins, but the real I think low-hanging fruit is the failures we've had in each of our companies, because we can help each other so we don't repeat those same things. So I'm going to turn it now back over to Ann, and thanks for everyone joining.
Okay, so what I wanted to go over first with the group is the group charter. So what is the Pipeline SMS group? So current state, so through the end of 2018, the sponsor of the group is the API AOPL Performance Excellence Team, so the PET. The steering committee is the group of API AOPL Pipeline SMS Implementation Team. And then we've got API AOPL staff involved as well. And so the members of this group are operators and principals from the companies that have signed the Pipeline SMS group membership letter. So someone in your organization or yourself had signed that letter and returned it back to API AOPL, and so that's why you're on the team. And API AOPL keeps that roster up to date. So as people move, as people change, it's important that if you move into a different job or if someone else comes into your group, that you get with API AOPL to update their roster so they can get the information out to you guys, whether it's via newsletter or via a webinar. So just to go over what SMS group, or remind you what SMS group folks get, the opportunity is to exchange ideas, information, and lessons learned about the implementation of 1173 through both industry-wide and peer-to-peer events, provide input into the Pipeline SMS annual report. So as we put an annual report together, there'll be input that your companies can provide. It'll help you also to educate external stakeholders on the value of Pipeline SMS, and also internal to your company as well. And then join in measuring conformance and effectiveness of Pipeline SMS programs. So the surveys that come out, they typically come out to the Pipeline SMS group members to fill out, aggregate data, make sure we know where Pipeline SMS is going from an implementation standpoint, and then, or a conformance standpoint, and then into effectiveness as we move through the years. So there's also a future state on the slide. So the Pipeline SMS implementation team won't be around forever. We are going to transition, at least the hope is, in 2018 to a Pipeline SMS sub-team that reports to the PET. So nothing changes for you. There'll just be a different group of folks that are in between the Performance Excellence team and the Pipeline SMS working group. So that is the plan. So that's the purpose of the SMS group. I guess that's the benefits of being part of the group. You get up-to-date information. You're able to provide feedback as needed, and it gives you an open line of communication to ask those specific questions that your company may need help on as they implement Pipeline SMS. With that being said, we put together a communication plan. So how many communications can the folks on the phone expect to receive? So our goal is to make sure you're getting the SMS information in a timely manner, and also create a community of information sharing. So there's a few ways we can do that. Folks that are on the call should have received an email communication in the second quarter that kind of gave an introduction to the Pipeline SMS team, as well as provided some additional information. There's conference calls or webinars, and then there's workshops and other webinars that may follow. So the workshop this year was in June. Obviously, that's open to a lot more than just the group members, but the intent was a quarterly email communication or conference call, so just to give the group updates quarterly on where API is, where the industry implementation team is, and then, like I said, you guys can provide input into what you'd like to hear from us, or who would like to speak on different topics, if that makes sense. So that's the communication plan. So you can expect to hear from API AOPL Pipeline SMS industry group at least quarterly. So we were thinking 2 of the quarters would be conference calls / webinars, and the other 2 would be an email communication, unless there's other ways the team would like to hear information. That is the communication plan, and that's the structure on how you all will get information from us. Again, we can check and adjust as needed. So that was the charter and communication plan. The next we'll get into the different team updates. So the big Pipeline SMS group is broken into 2 groups. We've got an effectiveness team and a conformance team. So if you read through RP 1173, it talks about conforming to the RP, and then it also talks about measuring the effectiveness. So the conformance team update, we are looking strictly at conforming. So how do you conform to the RP? So there are survey questions that you guys should have received last year. There were 12 of them. You also would have received a listing of questions from PHMSA as well, so someone in your company would have filled that information out, sent it back to API. So this year we are looking to combine those two surveys. That way you're not getting two surveys asking similar questions. We're going to pull those together, sending them out in the fourth quarter of 2017 to the different companies to get their feedback. Same types of questions we asked last year. We're looking at sending it out in October and hopefully getting information back from the companies before Thanksgiving. And then API, AOPL will aggregate those survey results and then present them in the 2017 annual report, which we're looking at coming out in April of 2018. So in the October timeframe, you all should see a survey coming out to you, and just wanted to make you aware that it is data that'll go back to PHMSA. It's also data that'll come back to API through the annual report. Also, our conformance team has been working on audit protocols. So there's a 68-question audit tool, which Bill Bird will go through as we move further into this webinar. And then there's also a 234-question tool, which is addressing all of the shall statements in 1173. So those two tools are in the works. The 68-question tool is almost ready for use, and the 234-question will come a little later. So, and again, Bill will get into the 68-question tool further on in the webinar. So what the conformance team is looking for up next is to develop a benchmarking strategy. So we're asking all these surveys, we have all these tools, how do we set up a structure where folks filling out this information can see the aggregated data and see where their company lines up with others. It'll be anonymous, of course, but trying to figure out, are there certain times of the year that you should submit 68 questions, 234 questions, and other information to figure out, you know, if you submit it by a certain date, then we could get back to you and say, hey, here's, out of everyone who submitted, here's where the average of everyone's results or everyone's results, and then you can line up your company's data with that data. So more to come on that. And then we're preparing the annual report, which, like I said, will be ready in April of 2018. So that's a quick update on the conformance team. I'm going to turn it over to Tony Cockshut with Enbridge to go over the effectiveness team.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. The effectiveness team has to measure effectiveness, and the tools need to answer two questions. And the slide shows the two questions. And the first one is, are you actually using the system's processes and procedures you document? So do you really do it, is one piece of effectiveness. The second piece is, are those systems, processes, and procedures actually improving safety performance? So is it helping, is the short version of that. And so our tools have been designed to help answer these questions and to show progress against the questions on a year-over-year basis. The picture on the right shows the maturity model that we've developed, and my next slide will show that in a little more detail. But the tools that we're developing have been designed to be simple and easy to use, trying to make these as easy as possible. And they have to work for small, medium, and large operators. It's really important as we put our tools together that they all fit together. So you will be hearing about some of the tools today. There are more to come. But we're doing a lot of work to make sure that all of the tools fit together. There is a way that the 68-question tool fits with the 234-question tool. We're not going to go into that today, but they do all work together. And ultimately, we have to be able to show improvement in safety performance. So we're doing this not just to implement safety management systems, but to make sure that we improve our performance. And we need to be able to show that. Next slide, please. This slide shows our maturity model, and this is the industry maturity model. So this is not from any one operator. This model represents what the implementation team has developed to measure our maturity over time. And you'll see that levels 1, 2, and 3 are the conformance levels. And so we have tools aligned to assess ourselves in those areas, levels 1, 2, and 3, how well are we doing in conforming. Effectiveness are levels 4 and 5, and the tools work for level 4 as well, and we have a level 5 tool that we're putting together. You'll see the plan, do, check, act cycle on the right-hand side, and that shows that the continuous improvement is pretty essential, and levels 1 to 3 are really getting our stuff in shape, developing our processes, making sure we have them documented. Levels 4 and 5 is where we really get them to work, and so there isn't an end to this model. So we don't anticipate that everyone gets to level 5 and that's the end. There's actually, the tools are designed in a way that we recognize that we will all go back and forth in performance over time. And while we may be doing really well, we may find something later on or have something in our own processes that fall apart and moves us back to a level 4 for a while as we fix those things. That's what continuous improvement is intended for. Next one, please. The model alone, though, doesn't tell the whole story. So to really get a complete picture, we have to have performance metrics as well. And so we are working to develop a suite of 6 to 10 metrics, and those are the ones at a high level that will identify our performance. So coupling the maturity model and our assessments against that with those performance metrics is what really tells the story. We're really trying to, there's a process underway to assess information from operating companies, recommendations for key performance indicators. We're going to look at those and see which ones really fit. We really want to, as much as possible, use what's readily available and to choose metrics that are meaningful to more than just one of our stakeholders. So they have to fit for industry, regulators, and the public. And so that work is underway for the rest of 2017. And we do have other tools in development for level 5, and we'll share those at a future session when we've gotten a little further. They're in draft mode now, and we're just testing them out. I'm going to turn it over to Bill Bird to talk about the 68-question assessment tool in a little more detail.
Folks on the phone, if you'll bear with me, I will pull that up on the screen so you can see what it looks like.
While you're doing that, I'll give a little background. Those of you who've been involved in the SMS implementation for your company for the past year or two probably attended some of the earlier workshops that API and AOPL put on about the SMS. And one of the first tools that was developed that's currently posted on the API or pipeline.sms.org website is what we call the gap assessment tool. And that gap assessment tool had 68 questions. We keep saying 68 questions. If you look, you'll find a few extra questions are actually in there. So it's actually 71 questions. But we've called it 68 so long, we're sticking with that. So so we had these 68 or so questions as part of the gap assessment tool. And those are organized by element, so you'll recall there are 10 elements in the RP. There's actually 116 sub-elements in the RP, and we felt like that going to the sub-element level was too granular, so we combined some of that together. So you've got, somewhere between 6, 7 questions per element that you could use in the gap assessment tool to see where your company was with having programs in place and develop a plan to develop your programs. So hopefully you've seen that gap assessment tool, you're familiar with it. And we took that same outline, the same structure, and built the conformance spreadsheet using those same questions, same breakout by element, and giving you a way of measuring where you are on this maturity model that's been developed. So you'll see on the spreadsheet here, and it's not quite final, but it's getting close. You'll see an RP sub-element on the left-hand side, the requirement out of the RP in column B. That requirement is kind of a Cliff's Notes description. It's not verbatim out of the RP because we are aggregating some stuff at this level. But that's the basic idea of what you're trying to do with that sub-element. And then you can rate yourself on a level from 0 to 4. And when I say rate yourself, that's exactly what we mean. This is intended to be a do-it-yourself process for the operators to use to gauge their own development. So one operator's evaluation of their program might not be entirely consistent with some other operator's evaluation of their programs, and that's okay. It's just for you to use in your company. And level 0 means you haven't really done anything on this yet. Level 1 basically means you've done your gap assessment, you have your action plan, but you haven't made much progress in actually doing it yet. Level 2 is, well, you've made a lot of progress with your implementation, but you're not finished yet. And then level 3 is when you finally done the things you identified in your gap assessment, you've got your programs in place. Now, maybe they're just in writing at that point in time, and they aren't really used throughout the organization, but at least you've developed your program and you're in the process of making sure that it actually works everywhere it's supposed to work. Then level 4 is what Tony mentioned earlier, the effectiveness of implementation. You've not only written your program, but it's actually working the way you intended it to work. Now, that doesn't mean that it's perfect or that you won't come up with a better program later, but at least you can show and demonstrate that what you designed is actually functioning the way it was supposed to function. So if you're doing it the way you wanted to and you can show that you can prove that, then that would be a level 4 established program. So what we've given you, level 0, 1, and 2, pretty easy to figure out. It's the same kind of thought process every time. When you get to level 3 and 4, we've given some more guidance to help you understand, well, is this a level 3 program or is this a level 4 program? And those extra guidance comments tied to that sub-element or that part of the RP. So once you've done your assessment by these different parts of the RP, you give yourself in column H a level assignment somewhere between 0 and 4 for each one of them. So you'll have 68, actually 71 answers in column H. And then those roll up into a couple of charts. They're very simple. So the first one was a bar chart. And this just shows for the 10 elements the average of where your company is on your self-assessment from 0 to 4. So in this hypothetical example, the company for element 1 would be about a 1.6, which means if you take all those questions for element 1, the ratings from 0 to 4, just average them together, their average would be 1.6. For element 2, their average would be 2. Now, this isn't really a score. It's not a weighted average. We don't say that anything is more or less important than anything else. We're just giving you a numeric average of all those different questions in the spreadsheet. So you can use it to measure your internal progress as you are developing and implementing your programs, because as long as you're consistent internally with how you answer, you should see these bars all getting taller over time. And then there's also a pie chart, which is the roll-up for all the elements corporate-wide. So how many of these questions are you at a level 0? How many are you at a level 1? How many are you at a level 2, 3, and 4? And again, the pie chart should become more 3s and 4s over time as you complete your implementation process and get it working throughout the company. So that's the idea behind the 68 question spreadsheet. Like I said, if you did the 68 question gap assessment, this is really just an extension of that gap assessment spreadsheet. Now there's 2 guidance documents that will go along with this, and they're both fairly short and simple. One is a guidance document specifically for how to do the spreadsheet. How do you decide if you're a level 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so pretty straightforward, just guidance on using this particular spreadsheet. Then there's a separate guidance document, which is kind of the audit team guidance. If you're doing an internal assessment, you just need to understand that this is a systems assessment, so it's not some more granular type of audit where you're looking for a certain number of records and checking a certain number of boxes. This is a system audit, so you're looking for systems in place. Do I have evidence that the things have been identified that need to become systematic, and we have or are developing systems to address that? These systems seem to be functioning the way they're supposed to. So the objective for this kind of audit is not perfection. It's not a gotcha, I found some defect or something that you missed doing last month kind of audit. This is, you're trying to look at a much higher level. So we talk about, what are the types of questions you ought to ask during a systems assessment? Who should be on your team? What kind of experience should they have? What types of people or parts of the organization should you be talking to when you're doing this kind of assessment? So that's what's in that process guidance document. So we're in the final stages of wrapping up the spreadsheet and those two guidance documents, and we'll have them posted on that sms.org website later on this year.
Okay. So next on the agenda is for Sean Lyon and Dave Merck to give an overview or some highlights of the INGA Pipeline Safety Committee meeting that was held a few weeks ago.
So one of the things that we've been working towards is really the pipeline industry. You got three segments. You have liquids, you have gas transmission, and gas distribution. And so we've been working to try to involve all three of them. I know several of you are members of all three and have to manage all three. So we're trying to have alignment and bring them along. And CJ invited us to the INGA meeting, and so we had a chance to present kind of where we're at all the way back to the beginning of our team and then some of the tools we've provided. And it was a great opportunity. What was interesting to me was, well, one, it was very well attended. There is a high interest by them. They really desire to utilize our tools and be part of the same solution and not have separate, Bill struggles counting between 68 and 71, that they don't have a 72 question tool, but we all are using the same assessment tool as we try to aggregate. And I know in the bigger picture, PHMSA and the public and the people who put the RP together, that's their desire, is that we all as an industry are working together. So this went a long ways towards that. The other thing I found interesting, and then I'll turn it over to Dave and see if he has any comments, is that there are similar issues in gas transmission, which is the group we talked to, as there are in liquids. There are struggles with, how do I get my management committed? How do I get my CEO or president to talk about it? Hey, I'm starting from scratch. Where do I go? So a lot of the same things we're all trying to navigate through, they're having the same thing. So I look forward, and in fact today we are having a face-to-face meeting for our implementation team, and INGA's involved, AGA's involved, SEPA's involved. So all those folks are there. So I think we're starting to see some good alignment across the industry, and this was just a step in that process.
Yeah, so this is Dave Merck with API. Really just to echo what Sean said, and for us as an industry and what PHMSA is expecting, as well as other state regulators, they really want to see the industry moving forward collectively and as best we can at the same pace with respect to implementation. So these opportunities, appreciate INGA allowing Sean and I to come out and present and speak on this. We presented to AGA, I think it was back in March or April in the spring, and there's been good collaboration across the industry. And this particular area. And so it's really, again, as Sean mentioned, these are the opportunities to hear beyond the liquid industry. And as Sean mentioned, you know, we did have some good, robust dialogue with the English Pipeline Safety Committee, and you know, we heard some similar things that we heard from the liquid side, and we've heard from liquid operators, but we heard a few new things, and so it's really, again, these are good sharing and learning opportunities for us to collectively share between the gas and liquid side. So look forward to these type of opportunities. We'll continue to promote these types of opportunities across the various trades, as well as SEPA up in Canada. We've pulled the SEPA in as well. So good efforts, and look forward to future opportunities on this.
I've got one more thing I wanted to add. So Tony shared the maturity model that we are, as you can tell, beginning to roll out. So you're one of the first groups to see it formally outside of our team. But that maturity model is a pretty big win for the industry. It has been adopted not only by the liquids, but it's been adopted by gas transmission in INGA and AGA, gas distribution, and PHMSA is also supportive. So we have one maturity model for all of SMS, and that's a big success as we start to build around this maturity model and where tools will fit within that model as we drive towards more and more better and better effectiveness. So I just wanted to mention that. So some of you, again, who are in multiple parts of the industry, it's one maturity model, and you should hear that same terminology. And we're working on formalizing, I'll say, visual tools that you can utilize in your companies with that common platform.
Good. So with that, now we want to hear from you. So Julie will be opening up lines as you like to ask questions or submit questions to us as a group to help you understand what does the Pipeline SMS group want to hear more of. So we talked a lot about tools, and Sean mentioned that, hey, is there a way to put that together to easily show companies how the tools all work together? Or maybe you'd like some information on a specific element. So we'd like to open it up to the group and understand a little bit what would you guys like as part of the SMS group to be informed and be educated about 1173.
At this time, I would like to remind everyone, in order to ask a question, press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. We'll pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster. Again, if you would like to ask a question, press star 1 on your telephone keypad. You currently have no questions at this time. Sorry, you do have a question from the line of CJ with Osmond. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hey, folks. This is CJ Osmond from INGA. I just wanted to follow up on Dave and Sean's last piece there. Thank them again for a great presentation at our recent meeting with our committee. I think there was a lot of productive discussion both during the session and follow-up. Obviously, as was mentioned, we still have a lot of good work to do, making sure the tools that we develop are fit for purpose for all the different segments of the industry. And I think that alignment is very important internally and externally as well, like Dave and Sean mentioned. So just wanted to thank those folks again for that.
Thanks, CJ.
Yeah, and along those lines about the fit for purpose, one thing that teams have been careful to do is to stay true to the RP and not become more prescriptive than the RP. That the RP is intended to be flexible, scalable. You know, what works for a large integrated oil and gas company doesn't work for a small distribution company, and you know, vice versa. So we're trying to walk this tightrope between providing guidance that's useful to you when you're deciding what level you're at or if your program is fully implemented or not, without telling you exactly how to do it. And we realize that people do want to know, hey, how should I do this? And the group members will have opportunities for peer reviews, for doing your own sharing amongst yourselves, doing benchmarking. So the group is intended to let people learn from each other and get good ideas for how to do it, but our assessment tools are just going to make sure that your process is meeting the intent of the RP, and not necessarily did you create a document that says X, Y, or Z. We're not trying to tell you exactly what kind of documentation you need to have in place. I hope that makes sense.
There's also a question in the chat about when the 68-question tool would be available and how we would roll it out. And Bill, I think you mentioned later on this year and via the PipelineSMS.org page. Was there anything additional you want to add to that?
I'm sure there'll be some kind of email communication to the group members when it's ready, but and I'd be happy to do some kind of webinar on the tool after everybody's had a chance to look at it. But we haven't got that scheduled yet.
One of the purposes of the SMS group is you'll be the group that's first to know. When something's released, you'll get an email, or we'll have, a quick call like this. I mean, that's the goal of that, so you don't have to learn about it around the horn. That's why we want to make this a community community of practice.
And we would look to you as group members also to let us know as things roll out like that, where additional training might be needed, where we might need to do webinars or workshops, or to support what you're doing, and then opening it up to obviously to the broader industry. But that's part of being a member, that we want to hear from you on how can we make the newsletter. We've had the one newsletter. How can we, and what information would benefit you or you would like to hear from us on? But again, what other training or info sharing opportunities do you think you would benefit from? So that's the kind of feedback, not necessarily today, but as group members to communicate with us, are helpful for us to help you. So if you have any ideas on that, we welcome that as well.
The current schedule is that the final drafts will be approved and blessed by our face-to-face meeting, which is November 30th, and then they'll be ready to go to as final documents for people to use.
Okay, so the tool, or the 68-question tool.
Right.
Okay.
The conformance team tool.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Julie, are there other questions out there?
You do have a question from Curtis Rounds with Interstate Energy. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Yes, good morning. At Interstate Energy, what we did in order to help us track progress is develop an access database. So we started out with that gap assessment tool, which is truly a wonderful tool and helped us tremendously. But as you assign tasks, goals to various peoples that are suspected to be completed in various years, and then you audit this and add more of the same, it gets very difficult to track in a spreadsheet. For that purpose, we created the database. And I just wanted you to be aware, I don't know if you think it has any value or not, but we're willing to share that with any other team members that might be interested.
Thanks, Curtis. This is Dave Merck, and I know you've forwarded that to Stuart and I, and we've talked about it, and I think it's definitely something that would be worth a share on. We can follow up with you, but I would like the idea and what you provided. So yeah, I think that is something we should probably follow up with you and somehow present to the larger group.
Yep. Yeah, I think the whole concept that you're mentioning, Curtis, of from cradle to grave, of that it's great to identify a gap, but it's even better to close it, and hopefully then it becomes effective. So how do all these tools drive you towards that? So sharing of that would be good, and we can help figure out how to roll that out and figure out where does that get incorporated into the tools we have.
Yeah, certainly that sounds like it would be a great backup process to use, if you will, when filling out the implementation spreadsheet. because you'd have excellent metrics. I identified 16 things to do to close gaps under element 1, and 8 of those are finished. I'm level 2.
Right.
Your next question comes from Jeff McGill with Energy Transfer. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi, I just had a question about one of the slides where it talked about the effectiveness team update and performance metrics complete the picture, and it talked about developing the 6 to 10 performance metrics. My question on that was that related then just to the maturity levels of the 1 through 5 that we then talked about with the spreadsheet and a way to do that, or does that have any reference to other KPIs ultimately for the measurement of the implementation or the effectiveness of the different elements? So I'm really just wondering, is there anything that's basically being developed as far as here's potential, again, KPIs for the performance measurement once you get, again, into that higher maturity levels of maybe the level, 4 or 5, what have you, I guess into the 4s at least. Is there any discussions going on, again, or a list of KPIs that are developed or being in the development phase for potentially, again, reviewing effectiveness of elements?
That's a great question, because it's really important that we pick the right KPIs to show performance. So we don't have a list. Well, we have some we're working with right now, but we're not really ready to share them at this point. But the KPIs have to be performance related. So they are more focused on things like leak and release measurements, and those sorts of things. It's our actual safety performance is what we need to get at with those KPIs. They will be less focused on the processes that will lead us there. So we are planning on using other tools to assess our performance at level 5. So the KPIs will not be measuring, how well are you doing in your leadership element. That's not what they're about. They're more focused on actual safety performance. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. But I'm just wondering, maybe is there a different term? Because one of the things we have as far as measuring the ongoing, the process, the system, which are things that we'd be looking for, say, in the assurance reviews or audits or what have you. So we'd be looking at really to measure the effectiveness of the system. Are we maintaining the system? I kind of generically use the term KPI to address both that as well as, the performance output of the whole program, as far as spills, leaks, incidents, and those types of things that it would help reduce. But, also, again, from really the management of the SMS program in and of itself, to me does probably warrant or require those KPIs on that process basis of the systems.
Yeah, yes, good point around the, what we call them. So performance metrics are more about the leaks, releases, incidents. The KPIs are more about your actual process performance. And so maybe if we can identify them in that way. You're right, we do need both to overall measure our performance, but the metrics the 6 to 10 will be performance metrics.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think also I'll just add, I think we're also trying to get some industry alignment on that tied to the industry strategic plan.
Yeah.
So we're not having 2,000 metrics that we're trying to track through PSMS, but what is the overall, and ultimately that's what the industry kind of reports at a high level, which really SMS is hopefully driving that improvement of those things. So we're trying to work collaboratively across the industry, API, AOPL, to try to help show that improvement.
Again, if you would like to ask a question, press star 1 on your telephone keypad.
And I guess just one quick thing to mention is that this presentation will be posted on pipelinesms.org, so if you want to go back and look at it in the future, it'll be out there and available for you.
There are no further questions at this time.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining, and if you do have questions, you can always submit them on Pipeline SMS. There's a contact information at API to submit information, so if you'd like to do that, by all means, send us some suggestions if you want to hear more, and we will be following up with communications in the future. Thanks, everyone.
This concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect.